Hi, Nick Vince here. This week on the Chattering Hour, I'm joined by music veteran of over 40 years and lovely bloke, G. Tom Mack. He's collaborated with some of the music greats such as Kiss, Carly Simon, Roger Daltrey, Robert Plant, Ice Cube, and Eminem. We talk about his classic theme for the film The Lost Boys and the musical he's based on the film, and so much more. Up next on the Chattering Hour, music veteran and Grammy Award winner, G. Tom Mack. And we're back with our special guest, G. Tom Mack. His music is featured in over 100 TV shows and 50 films internationally. And he won his first Grammy Award for the sampling of Cry Little Sister on Eminem's album Recovery. We talk about the cost of writing the Lost Boys musical, the new musical he's written during lockdown, and some amazing future collaborations. So let's get to it. Gerard, thank you very much indeed for joining me here today.
And you say my name like it's properly said. It is G. Tom Mack because nobody could ever in America ever pronounce my name properly. It was like, all right, when it came up with Gerald or Jerry, and I said, no, it's Gerard. And then an American said, no, it's Gerard. I'm like, oh, bloody hell. I'm just changing it to G. Tom Mack. It was just, I mean, it's as if my last name, McMahon, McMahon, wasn't enough, So I had no idea that my name would be the demise of my career.
Yeah, it's funny. Once I'm Nicholas Vince professionally. I got married a few years ago, and Nicholas Berman Vince. We double barrel.
Oh, shame on you. Anyway, go on.
Because it just causes endless confusion. Right now, speaking of names and going back, I'd like to take you all the way back, if I may, to Birmingham, where you were brought up. You were born.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
You left when you were 11 years old?
Yeah. 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah. So, and that must have been quite an upheaval because you moved to New York. I can't imagine two different.
Well, it was my dad, my Auntie Peg, who first came over, and she was very close with my dad, and they're Irish, from Dublin, and she said, oh, we should come over, much more opportunity here for the boys, meaning my brother and myself. So long story short, Dad saved up all his money. My dad was a big music freak, and he loved, he liked the Sinatras and all of that stuff, but was way into black music, jazz and all that stuff as well. He had a wide peripheral of just music that he just loved, and including opera, and and he was a great Irish tenor himself. So anyway, we did. Yeah, it was a bit of an upheaval because we had no idea what America was like, and we'd seen it on the telly but you don't know it until you're in it, right? So from Birmingham, as you know, what that little industrial city was for many years, and we just kind of landed in New York for a bit, and then my dad's mate, who he was a priest, was in a town called Wichita, Kansas. We were trying to make our way west,
right,
without the wagon, and we basically got to Wichita, Kansas, because my dad got a good job there, and this particular Father Wilson was his name. He actually had a radio program on every Sunday night, for the Catholics, if you will. So, and he used to have my dad on to sing, a few Irish tunes and what have you, Rosa Tuli and what have you. So we ended up there, and that's really beginning of all things music for me. And obviously I'd go back to England and still had the connection there. More me as I got a bit older than my parents. They basically just continued on the path of Americana. But yeah, what an experience. But music was where it's all started, in Wichita, Kansas. And lo and behold, there happened to be some really good musicians that were older than me, but that's where I was able to learn from really good players, play the guitar, and I always had the voice. So it was, wasn't that good then, but it got better.
So it sounds as if you kind of like, music was just in the family basically, and you just kind of absorbed it from like birth, and this was how you got into music?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, good. Mom and dad always had music around the house. It was never like one kind of music. I mean, when I got into my thing, which was R&B and rock and all of that stuff, they embraced it. They weren't like, oh, that's not proper music. They were very, they got it, and
Right.
that's to their credit. It was nice to get that support.
Right. And when did you first pick up a guitar?
I was about 12 years of age, and I was about 11 actually. But a mate of mine down, who I went to school with, had a guitar that he never used. It was this beautiful Gibson guitar, and I said, "May I have a loan of it?" And I had no idea what to do on it, but I was just picking out notes, and I would be listening to a record or something, and then just could figure out the melodies of what was going on just having no lessons whatsoever. And then this bloke down the road, who I ended up being in a band with, he was about 18 years of age, and he basically said, "Hey, if you want to come down, I can show you some chords." And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit down and do scales and all that stuff. I just wanted to learn really good rock chords or whatever, R&B. And he was brilliant. And about a year and a half later, I ended up being in his band at 14. And they were all 18, 19, and they were all really good. But problem being is I'm it wasn't such a problem. We were filling up the houses, and I had a decent voice at that point. We were just rocking it and packing in all these clubs around the middle of, Kansas, Oklahoma. And mom and dad wasn't too pleased about that, because I was always out late, and then took them forever to get me out of bed for school in the morning. So, but hey, they were tolerant.
So you're talking about school. So when did you finish formal education?
Formal education? Well, that's a really good question. I wouldn't say it was formal, but I certainly went through. I didn't go on to college. I was fortunate enough at one point, when I started to really get into music. I lived in college. I moved. Our band played all around the middle of America, and I ended up in Colorado, being in another band, and I just happened to live across the road from Colorado University, and that's where there was a really good music program, but I had no money to get into that. And basically, this mate of mine just said, "Go sit on this orchestration class. The piano room's over there. Nobody will bother you." So I taught myself how to play piano. I mean, I got some books, and just kind of, with the help of some other players. So that was my next instrument, and I was really getting quite good on it. And I could play the bass pretty well at that point. And there was in the sort of what's called a 5 Points area, which was the black area of Denver. I used to go down there and play an after-hours gig from 11 to 4 in the morning, and it was quite an experience. I was the only white guy in the band, or for that matter, in the clubs. But I had, I had soul on the bass, so that's how I got the gig. But I was sitting on these classes, and I was learning orchestration, because I didn't know how to read or write. I just wanted to know how I put all this stuff in my head if I've got to explain it to an orchestra at some point, which came in very handy when I started to do film work.
Right. And were you kind of writing songs from an early age, or did that come later?
I think I probably started writing when I was about, I think about 14, 15. They were terrible songs, but they were like, but it showed. I said, at one point I wrote a really good song. It happened to be kind of a country song. And I realized, okay, you could probably get good at this. And then little by little, the inspirations of Stevie Wonder, Laura Nyro, and all the people, the great songwriters, Elton John, all those were influences in me as a young boy, you know. So I started to really get into, I realized that in order to really do this, you've got to be a good songwriter. I mean, it's good to have a good voice and a unique voice, but the songs are really key to making things happen.
Right, right. Do you remember the names of any of your early songs?
Lady of Mine was the good one I wrote. What was it? I Saw the Doctor as He Cried. It was about an abortion. It was about a doctor that was doing illegal abortions. I mean, this is like, you know, not quite the love song you'd expect out of me.
Right.
But yeah, I was writing these kind of daft but they were pretty good. I mean, I always thought I Saw the Doctor would be a great Joe Cocker song because it almost had like got me a ticket for an airplane kind of vibe to it, but the lyrics were a bit daft.
Right, right. But I mean,
but yeah, I mean, it was great. You know, I certainly I grew pretty quickly as a songwriter once I started to really hone in, and it was great having the guitar and the piano to go back and forth between those two instruments to play,
right,
to write on rather.
Right, yeah, yeah. I presume because it's just easier to put it together on a piano or guitar. And is there a difference? Do you approach different songs at piano? Is there a particular type of song do you start?
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting you bring that up because sometimes I'll start it on a piano, and I go, oh, this has really got a great vibe, and I probably wouldn't have written the song on the piano, but it had I not been at the piano. But then that song turns into, hold on, go over and make it more of a guitar song, and you know, and vice versa. So that's happened as well. So what was the piano song turns into more of a guitar song, and the opposite.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, we're talking about early songs. The song "Is That You" was picked up by Kiss. How did that
Yeah.
come about?
Well, I was their producer, a guy named Vinnie Poncia, who was a pretty big producer back then, wanted to produce my first album. And he came to, I was living in LA, which I now live in. I kept going back in New York, forward to New York for the longest time, you know, living wise. But he, at the time, came out and as producers do, he wanted me to run down all the songs that I was considering, you know, just everything. And so I did, and I played that one. And I said, I really don't feel right about that song for myself because it didn't quite fit with everything else I was doing at the time, you know. I was kind of writing an AC/DC song at that time, you know, just to see if that would work for me. This is what I called it, my AC/DC song. But anyway, he said, would you mind if I took it and played it for Kiss? They need a single for this album. I'm going like, that was odd because they write their own songs, you know. Why would they now want an outside song? He said, if you don't mind, I'd like to take the demo and play it for them. Well, he did, and they loved it, and the record label loved it, and it was just, it was on the Unmasked album, and the rest, I remember getting a call on my answer machine from Gene and Paul saying, man, thank you so much for the song, and we love it here, and they were playing the track in the background. So that was my first, I think that might have been my first ever song cover placement. Maybe, I think. There was a Travares, the R&B group, did a song that I did for a movie called Defiance. One of those, anyway. Doesn't matter.
Right. And kind of when did you move to Hollywood and start doing films?
Well, I came out here and in the early 80s, and I had been here before, and I had already made a record before with a producer named James William Guercio, who was the producer of Chicago. So I made this album. I was really young at the time, but it was just it just didn't come out the way I wanted it to. It was very slick and polished, and I got out of that deal and basically, you know, came out here to get away from it all, from, you know, the whole production agreement I had with him. And I just started to, you know, make connections, if you will, and got a manager who basically brought this guy Jerry Bruckheimer down to see me perform a song, perform a show. He was looking for somebody to write a song for this movie he was producing called Defiance. And so I wrote a main song for that film. And then he said, I love it. Why don't you write me 4 more songs for the movie? And I'm going, wow, this is good. But he wanted something that was like Springsteen, Bob Seger-esque. And I sort of made, on the demos, I made my voice sound like that to get the point across, right? So I kept wondering, well, who's going to be singing these songs? It's probably not going to get Bruce, because Bruce wasn't doing movies or anything of that sort at that time. And I didn't know who, and so I got the approval and on all 4 songs, I guess 5. And I said, Jerry, I said, I need to know who's going to sing this, because I got to put the right keys together. He says, you're singing them. And I'm going like, what? He said, no, you're the voice of this film. And I'm going like, mate, that's not really my voice. I was just kind of putting it on to get the point across. And he says, well, it's a good put on, you're doing it. And it was really mad. I was beside myself.
I'm sure.
So that was the first film I did. And then that led to, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and a bunch of other 80s films. And I got really, kind of got my foot in the door with that film.
What's your favorite part of the whole process? Is it when you first sit down at the keyboard and it just, you work your way through actually creating the song? Then of course if you're singing it, you're going to be recording it, getting in the studio, mixing, producing, etc. Do you have a particular favorite part of the process, or do you just love the lot?
Yeah, there's no one thing really. It's I tell you, my most dreadful part is putting my vocals on, because I'm so hard on myself and you just want it to come out naturally. And it just, and eventually gets there. I don't like belaboring over things, meaning like a vocal, especially. Mm-hmm. Production stuff on a record, you want to make it, right and real. But there's no one particular thing that, I do like the initial stages of coming up with a good song. That's always when it's really good and there's no denying to yourself that you wrote a good song, there's no better feeling than that.
Right.
It's when you get down with, it's the process in which it goes through. There's so many, obviously, arrangement and all that kind of stuff comes into play. I'm working on a new album right now. I've been taking my time with it, just writing. I've written so many pieces over the pandemic period, and then you find these gems that just like, oh my God, this is really working. And so whatever an album is these days, I've been putting out a few songs, making videos here, just kind of keeping my time occupied with being productive and writing a song, mm-hmm. putting a video together. I did this song a couple of weeks ago called "Looking for a New York Clue," which is my ode to New York and love affairs, which is kind of a Valentine song. So yeah, it's been good, just to be able to, certainly it's not as much as it could be a dull moment during this past year. Oh, yeah. And I've kept myself quite busy and starting another musical, actually. So that's cool.
Oh, good. Well, we'll kind of come back to that if we may, because I have to say there is something, I do actually have a prop, because this is the album I used to, I know, can you see this? If I possibly not, because it's
I don't think so. It looks like it's Lost Boys, though.
It is the Lost Boys. It's
I can see the font.
Yes.
I can see the font go by.
I'll put this. This is always, there we are. If I hold it there in front of me and don't put it in front of
there you go.
The green
now you
screen.
Can see it.
Yeah, now we can see it, because this is
lovely.
I literally lifted this off the shelf of albums downstairs and just thought, yeah, because of course I used to listen to this, and Cry Little Sister was the track that I always wanted to listen to. And of course, this is on vinyl, so you can't, unless you actually literally pick the needle off the album and then put it back to the beginning of that particular track.
What a lovely feeling that used to be. I was 2 when I was doing that. No, just joking. But yeah, it's quite a story. You know, I mean, at that point, I'd probably done music for about 13 or 14, maybe more films. But I always got to see the film, you know, watch it to get a vibe for it, and see how it works, see what to write for the film. Let that be, you know, anything from Fast Time to Ridgemont High to All the Right Moves, this one and that one. Mm-hmm. And you know, or they would have something tempt in the movie. You know, they would have a what's called a temp track, something like that. Right. I remember All the Right Moves had Little Red Corvette in, you know, that film. It was Tom Cruise movie. Yeah. And so I wrote, so, you know, that's a great song. So they came to me, can you get the vibe of this? And I came up with something. And it's had a bit of a Prince vibe to it, but yeah, and it worked well. And so my point being is, you always had some kind of direction by the temp in there. With Lost Boys, there was no temping. In fact, Joel Schumacher, who was already a fan of my work, got in touch with me early on and asked if I would be interested in writing a theme song for his film. And I said, well, what is it? He said, oh, it's a vampire movie, and it's, you know, I'm really taking it to a whole other level. And I respected his work at that point. I knew very well his history of the few things he had done, you know, like he wrote Car Wash and what have you, but he was talented. And I was then living in New York. So they sent me on a script because he said, maybe you'll get a vibe. You know, I said, well, can I look at it? He said, well, we're filming right now. And so I basically, read the script, thought it was brilliant, and got up the next day and started to write something because I was inspired by what that was and what was going on in my own life at the time. And started writing it, and then went up to my studio and finished it, and basically started writing it, putting a demo together, and then sent it on to him. He was in Santa Cruz at the time making the film. And he just was enamored by the demo. And I remember him ringing me one morning just saying, can't believe it, you've not seen a piece of footage. And this, I'm playing the song on the set on repeat. It's that good. And I'm going like, really? Because I thought to myself, I liked it, but part of me thought like, well, it's not really a vampire-y kind of thing that one would expect. But I just thought, he did say, write what you feel. And there's no temp track here to sort of emulate or whatever. So I did just that. And right. Then went back and obviously re-recorded it, but I stayed very true to the demo that I did make and the feel of everything. But I never would have thought in a million years that it would go on to have the life that it's had. And, you know, even separate from the film, it's, I mean, it's been covered by Eminem. You sampled me, and Marilyn Manson did a version of a couple of years ago. I mean, it just goes on, and it's been in, besides Lost Boys, which is what it's really attached to. It's gone on to have its own life, you know, with fans of mine, and which I got a lot of fans because of that song. But yeah, I sometimes have to tell people they've never seen the film, but they love the song. You should go see it. You need to really see the film to get the full effect and the origin of it, really.
Right. Are you a fan of horror films?
I do. I like things that are make you think, or, you know, that aren't just your the psychological ones.
Yeah.
I like being frightened by the more psychological ones. When it's just like, you know, kind of know what's going to happen, not really bothered with it. But yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of things. What was the one that was a big franchise, but I can't remember the name right now. Psychological horror slasher kind of thing. Oh, come on, help me out.
I don't know. The immediate one I'm thinking of is Insidious, but I'm not sure if that's the one.
Insidious is one, but that's not what I'm thinking of. It'll come.
It'll come. Yeah, probably about
I haven't had
3
enough
o'clock.
coffee yet.
I was going to say, it's usually about 3 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to get to sleep. I thought, oh yeah,
always. Yeah.
So you were talking about the fact that you've mentioned very early on about doing a musical based on the Lost Boys.
Yeah.
In fact, you were telling me about it when we met a couple of years ago. So this has now been released as an album.
Yeah, the album, we actually went ahead and put the album out in advance. I mean, this musical was, it was still going through a lot of things. Obviously, musicals are far different thing than film. They take forever to get done, to get made. And it's just so many different kind of moving parts with the theater world, as you probably well know.
Yeah.
And but it's I started writing it about 5-6 years ago, and I just sort of was on the fence about, well, just vampire stories don't really work, have not worked that successfully on the stage. But I said, with Lost Boys, if you keep the fun in there and you keep and give them something that's a backstory and how they all came together, something unique, and keep to the story, I think there might be something there. And so that's what I kept on doing, and with the writing of the book. And that's what the term is in a musical. People always call it a script, but it's a book. It's a book, as you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kept moving forward with it, and then all of a sudden, this thing called a pandemic came along, and it prevented anything from happening.
Yeah.
So we were turning some good corners, have some very good, solid producers back in New York, and yeah, so it's kind of, don't know. I mean, nobody's backed out, so it's just a matter of when this can all happen again. I mean, from what I understand, it's 2023 realistically. So, but that'll come sooner than you know. And that's the thing. I say, 2023, it seems ages away, but it's really as fast as things go by these days, right?
Right. So, but you're talking about the book, which, as you say, some people may think of as the script, i.e., the story and the bits in between the songs. Assuming it's not an opera, so you're responsible for the music, the lyrics, and the book.
Yeah. What a challenge. It nearly killed me. I'm not telling you. I went to the UK. I toured last year in the UK, 2019 in October. Yeah. And then I got approached by these guys, documentary filmmakers, to make a story of my life, and a story of my career, and to tie it in with the Lost Boys musical. And I thought, they came up with some really clever ideas. They have a company called Jib Jab Productions, and I thought, wow, this is good. And I thought about it, and so long story short, I went back over in February to start shooting the documentary. And we did a live show in Edinburgh. Oh, not in Edinburgh, but what was it? What was the town we played in? I can't remember right now. Bathgate? No, maybe. Yeah, I think it was Bathgate.
Right.
And played in this really cool old theater, had a packed out house, and they filmed it live, and then we were doing interviews, and I got ill. I thought, in COVID, this was late February, and it was starting to happen in London, but I got really ill, and it took me, and I kept pushing it. I was ill when I was performing. I mean, literally, I could feel something. When hitting high notes, I could feel something on my lungs just pounding. It was horrible. It was severe. And I had fever, and I definitely overdid it. And went back to London and just stayed at, my dear friend house in Chiswick, and then went back to, I had stopped off in New York going to England at the time, went back to LA, got checked out, and I was suffering from exhaustion, as they said, because they checked it. It was early days of detection of the virus. So, and I did an antibody test. It didn't show up there. Likely I didn't have it, but I had something that was causing me to, really in a bad way. And it's kind of, you know, went on for a while, off and on, and I was getting very kind of affected. And I'm tip-top shape. I'd had every test known to man. I mean, literally, MRI on the brain, the neck, the spine, blood tests. And, you know, they all came back just clear, and thank God for that. But it just was. But you know, yeah, it slowly came out of it, and it's been a rough road coming back. This is the first time I've actually talked about it in an interview. But yeah, thank God I'm functioning. You know,
Right.
other than being ill for the time I was, but yeah, so the motor skills are working.
Oh, well, yeah, that's always one of the real fears. So were
Oh
they
yeah,
able to get enough footage to get the bulk of
they
the
got
documentary?
some. Yeah, getting back to the showbiz part of it.
Sorry.
Sort off with my health, but it's
We'll talk about your
but
health.
it's you know, they did get some, you know, certainly not enough to make a documentary.
Right.
The whole
Right.
intent was that we were coming over here in April to do interviews with the likes of, you know, well, Joel Schumacher, who passed on, and doing this last year, unfortunately, but with many different people. I mean, people, Roger Daltrey, they were set to do interviews with Roger Daltrey and Robert Plant and various other people I've worked with, and a series of film, you know, actors and, you know, musicians and people I work with here. I mean, it wasn't like interviewing me the whole time, but it was.
Right.
But they had a whole plan, which obviously got taken off the table for the time being.
Right. Right. Now, so kind of like Lost Boys is kind of on hold at the moment. Have you been working on any other musicals?
I have actually. My friend and Paul Brooks, who I worked on a film called Chasing Amy years ago with. He was the producer of that film. He went on to produce My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Pitch Perfect 1, 2, 3, and 4, whenever it happens. And you know, he said, you should put something together, put a musical together. Let me have bring me something. So this was about a year ago. I mean, just when the whole pandemic started, I just thought, I can't be bothered doing another musical. But about 3 months went by, and I had this idea about pen pals in the 80s, and 3 different high schools, one being in London, one being in New York, and one being in LA, and how 16 characters all connect through pen pals. They all, you know, and it's a very interesting sort of way in which they connect, which I can't get into right now.
Sure.
But I thought this could be a cool idea. Take a decade of the 80s in high school and just basically put in the pot Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, you know, Pretty in Pink, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and just put like something original together that's not based on those, but has that feel. And I always thought, and I just so I put a pitch together for Paul, and over Zoom, because he's in London, and he loved it. And he said, "What are you calling it?" And I said, "I don't know. Don't you forget about me." And that's how to. And at the moment, literally on that Zoom call, that's when I came up with the title, because I thought that's such a brilliant title. And I would use. And he said, "Are you going to use that song?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And the rest will be original sort of material, things that are a bit like Police or Depeche Mode, or things that of that era of the 80s, of that decade. So it's ongoing, and I did bring in a co-writer, a British guy named, quite clever, Charlie Watson, to work with me on it, and because I just didn't want to go through doing a whole thing again on my own. And Paul thought it was a good idea to have a co-writer on this, because I've said enough doing all the music and lyrics, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, having somebody else to work with and bounce ideas off. It sounds really, really fun. I think there's a TV series over here at the moment called It's a Sin, which is all about drama students and young people in the 1980s.
I've not seen it.
It's very good.
Oh, cool. I got to check it out then.
Yeah.
What's it on?
It's on, I've got HBO at the back of my, on the UK, in the UK, it's on Channel 4.
Okay.
I've got HBO. It's one of those 3-letter acronyms, but I think it's an HBO production in the US. It's definitely a
Yeah, right.
joint production. Um, and highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Really fascinating thing. But I think
Great. Well, I've definitely, I've seen bits what it is, and I thought to myself, this looks clever. I've got to take a
yeah,
look at this.
yeah. Well, I just
Fantastic.
think I mean talking about the 80s, so much happened in the 1980s, particularly to young people. There is so many fascinating films, albums, styles of music, and it's an exciting time.
Well, I look at the 80s as comfort food to a time that we're in now. Not just the pandemic time, but where we've come to so far. People go back to that decade because it's like what the 50s were to the 70s. You know what I mean? It was as much as, but I think the 80s is almost, there was a sense of of, of letting things go and freedom, and just a sort of, where punk existed, and punk turned into new wave, and the films that were made. It was such an incredible amount of creativity that came out of that period. And it just, and there was a sense of high school students and their minds being set free, not necessarily by drugs, well, a little bit of that too, but there's a sense of it being, finding oneself. And the characters that I have in this all have different stories. I mean, I've got like a transgender Vietnamese guy, and then I've got like a girl that's an incredible designer, hair designer, and her mom's a prostitute. That's how they keep life together. And but they all connect at some point. And I've got like a techie, this girl that's an incredible. She's black and she's a tech, and then of course, and she's brilliant, and she mates with pen pals with a guy in New York who's like this Wall Streety wannabe in his high school years, but he figures out how to get her connected to Silicon Valley, and then the hooker mom hooks up. It's like this, all these effects of, and you're going through the 80s and the whole decade, and you see how they all either succeed or fail at the end of it. But nobody really fails because they've learned a lot by the 80s. Right. So I'm really happy, pleased of where this is going. And it's great having a collaborator, because, he lets me do, he's, as Paul was saying, he's going to let you do your freedom thing. And then he's going to be able to, give you, be a sounding board, and also bring things. He's already brought a lot to the table on it. So we're moving at a pretty quick speed with it, which I'm pleased. Right. So, why not have a couple of things up on Broadway and the West End? I ain't got that much time. Well, and as long as it takes, bloody hell. As long as it takes to get a theater musical production up. But at least, I'll be dead and gone, and hopefully they'll outlast me. Well, okay. But hopefully, again, not too long, and hopefully, you're going to be there for the 1000th performance of these things, because, I like 90. You never know. But I'll be in good shape. All this working out and everything, looking after myself, I think that's really definitely kept me in mental good shape anyway. Right. As well as physical. One of the other things, there's a couple of other things I wanted to move on to, one of which was an album you released called Full Circle of Mad Years. How did that? My greatest hits. Yeah. My greatest non-hits, as I call it. And I could not, people, it was interesting. A few people, why do you just call it your greatest hits? I said, because they weren't all hits. They were like songs that were very popular to certain people, that, from this movie or that movie or this TV show, or, my original demo of Kiss, and then Carly Simon original, it's a mishmash of so many different things that I did. And so I thought, like, well, those were mad years, and, full circle. And I just thought full circle of mad years. And it was, it's actually done a lot of streaming on so many different songs from, you know, different. I mean, I'm amazed at how many of the TV shows got heavy duty streaming, because none of these songs were ever released, with the exception of a few. My song "Half" from my first G. Tom Mack album in 2000 was featured in Scrubs, the TV show, and the next following 2 days, when iTunes was on, pretty heavily on. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking around here because it looks like my battery's going low on this thing. But yeah, sorry for this, because my computer's down, and I don't want to get into it. But yeah, where were we?
We were talking about full circle of mad years.
Oh yeah, right. So it's interesting just how, you know, you've never thought that people would pay that much attention to a song just playing kind of in the background or whatever, but they do, and there's been many requests for these songs over the years, and so I just decided to put it out.
Right.
You know,
it's really,
and there's an original demo of "Cry Little Sister" is actually on it as well,
which is fascinating, because to listen to that, it's just like, okay, no, I can understand.
Oh, you heard
it.
Then.
Took it, and it's interesting to compare to the fully fledged version that you get in the film.
Right, exactly.
Now
you
have a wander around, see if you can find a charger.
I am having a wander around and doing that. Might have to go out to the car, actually.
Oh, this would be
interesting.
I find we're getting a great view of your home. It's like through the keyhole.
I know. Well, you're going to have more of a view as we go through the maze, and you can see me all lit up here. And you can see the back garden. Hey, let's have a view of the back garden.
Oh wow!
Yeah, you have to. Where are you right now?
I'm in Croydon, in South London.
Oh yeah, I know Croydon.
Yeah, so we've literally just got
one of my characters, actually, Robert, is from South London, and he's an incredible athlete, and I don't want to get into it, but he hooks up with he doesn't know his sexuality at this point, and that has nothing to do with being from South London, by the way, or it could.
A lot to do with the 80s.
Oh yeah. But long story short, he's from South London, and some wonderful characters in "Don't You Forget About Me." I'm so pleased that they're coming together so well.
Right.
Anyway, I'm going to plug in here for a bit, see what we got. Sideways.
Well, if we go sideways, it's fine. Whichever's most comfortable for you. I was conscious you may be having to hold the phone in your hand while you're talking to me.
Yeah, well, listen, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
We're good.
So there we are.
So that was full. So the other thing, you mentioned Billy Bob Thornton when we were chatting before.
Yeah, he's been a mate of mine for a while, and we started to just sort of conceptualize some songs and ideas over the pandemic time. And lovely guy, great singer. I mean, he's got such an authentic sounding singing voice, and a great writer. And we've been, kind of toying around. I have a friend of mine whose name's Snuffy Walden. He's a composer, and who I've known literally probably when I first came over to America. He's a Texas boy. He does the music to The West Wing. He does the music to so many, so many films, and he's but he is an amazing guitar. What he was in a band in the UK that he went over, and can't remember the name of the band right now, but he was looked as the next Jimmy Page. I mean, he had those kind of guitar skills. So I introduced him to Billy, and then I was on the phone with Roger Daltrey. So we might just do, we're talking about when we can go out and play. The four of us go out and have a go and do some gigs live. So we've been writing some new songs for that. We've all been kind of, I collaborate with Billy and Roger, and I wrote and produced Roger Daltrey's solo album "Rocks in the Head" back in 1992, and that was a really fun project to do. And Roger B and I became very good mates as a result of that. So yeah, we just kind of tossing this idea around. It'd be kind of a fun thing to go out and do some dates, the four of us together, and mixing the film and music thing. Yeah,
that'd be an extraordinary gig. Okay, well, just before we finish entirely, I've just got some set questions I'd like to ask you, if I may. And the idea is you're going to be going on a very long voyage, and it's just choosing things that you would take with you in terms of entertainment. So if I had to ask you to narrow down films to one film that you couldn't imagine doing a long voyage without, what film would you take?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, I know this kind of, I honestly got to say, one of my favorite films is Catch Me If You Can. And I'll tell you why. I can watch that film over and over, and the performances are so bloody good in that movie they're just inspiring. I mean, Christopher Walken is probably one of his best roles from an emotional point of view, and just being so beyond his Christopher Walken, you know, that you expect him to be. And Leo is amazing. It's just got so much depth to it. And I always keep thinking, God, it kind of seems like an overlooked film. And you don't expect Steven Spielberg to have, you know, really not, I mean, he's brilliant, but it was definitely off the beaten path for him in a way to make a film like that. So that would, I think, you know, obviously Goodfellas, which I've watched a zillion times, brilliant. And, you know, probably if I've only allowed one, I'll take Catch Me If You Can, because I do love those performances.
Okay. Cool.
And what's the next one?
What's the next one? Book.
A book. Oh, man, now you really, I guess the road less traveled. Because if you're going on a long journey, you're going to really need something to keep you solid. And I remember reading that book years ago. My girlfriend back in the day, she, you know, we were kind of going through something. She said, you know, this is a good life thing for you. And I remember reading, I went on holiday to Cape Cod, and we were kind of like, are we going to be together or not? And that book straightened me out. So I said to myself, well, this is a good thing to take on a journey anytime you're going through something in life. But so anyway, I'll go with that. I mean, I could go with the heavier books, and I could be, oh boy, he's a real literary guy, isn't he? But I'm not going to do that. No. I'm going to go with the sort of like keep life straight.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Now this is going to be really tough. What about an album?
That is a really tough one. Oh my God. An album. Oh my God. I don't know. It's, I think Elton John's Madman Across the Water. It just comes to mind. You know, there's so many brilliant songs on that song that I kind of like every once in a while. I don't remember Razorface or whatever that song was. Just certain things that just were on that album that were just so eclectic. And I'm just right at the top of my head. It just, I mean, I love Laura Nero's Eli and the 13th Confession. You know that album?
I don't.
It's an album that inspired everybody from Elton John to Todd Rundgren to, you know, even people of, you know, contemporary people of today, you know, Chris Martin and of Coldplay. And
right.
I mean, yeah, Paul Stanley, it's one of those albums, the quintessential singer-songwriter album. And she was brilliant. She was a songwriter she died about 15 years ago. She wrote songs that the Fifth Dimension did back in the day. She was 18 years old writing these, and When I Die, and, you know, Wedding Bell Blues, and all these incredible songs. You know, Going Down to Stony End, what Barbra Streisand did. She had a lot of covers. I mean, people covered her songs from that album and others. So,
right.
Boy, it's tough. Too bad I can't take two. I think I'd go with Madman Across the Water, just because it's always, again, it's like Catch Me If You Can. There's always some bits that you can't really, you know, that you find And I want to be if you're going to be viewing something over and over again and listening, it better have something to show you something new every time you listen to it, right?
Right. I have to admit, I'm completely unfamiliar with that one. Don't know, but I will go and check that one out now. That sounds fascinating.
What, the Laura Nyro one?
The Lauren, actually, even the Elton John Madman Across the Water. I don't know how I completely missed that one, but
yeah. Well, it had Tiny Dancer on it, and
right.
That was the hit, and the
Right.
rest of it was just very adventurous. Levon was a great song. I mean, it was a very eclectic album. It wasn't like they were like, oh, Elton John, the hits.
Right.
It's just one. Yeah, I think Tiny Dancer was the only single off that album.
Right.
So it's marvelous orchestration by Paul Buckmaster.
Right.
And, yeah, fantastic.
Okay. What about a favorite food or beverage?
Food or beverage? Oh God. Let's see. When I get back on meat, when I go on this journey. I used to love a good lamb, and I make it very well. Let's see. God, the food thing is. I'm very fussy. I'm not quite vegan, but I don't eat dairy and stuff. Boy, I tell you, I don't know. Probably. Well, if I'm on a voyage, I'm on this voyage on the water.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I certainly wouldn't have trouble catching a good halibut now and then, right? So I do make a good halibut, so I'll go with my halibut and mixed rice and sauteed broccoli and spinach. How about that?
Oh, that sounds very
but
nice.
You can't live on that. So, but well, you could. If that's all you got, you got no other choice, right?
Well,
and my drink will be Grey Goose vodka. If I can bring my martini shaker, I'll do that as well.
Right. What about a piece of visual art? A painting?
Visual art? Oh my God.
Statue.
Well, I'm a big Van Gogh fan. I think I'd like, God, anything, Starry, Starry Night.
It's a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Yeah. So maybe that one would. It's very traditional, but when you're on a journey like that, I think there's it's almost like a comfort piece of art, isn't it?
But also, I think you can write, as McLean did, obviously, but you can write stories in your head about exactly what's going on in that village and that sky and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
What about it? And finally, what about a luxury? And
a luxury?
Yeah.
I forgot what that's all about. I forgot what luxury it is. Man, I haven't had. I've been on my own here. So it's been.
Oh my God.
There's no shagging going on. So let's see. That would be an Aussie line. My dear mate from Birmingham. Let's see. It's amazing to be celibate this long, isn't it? I mean, when you're on your own, there's so much we take for granted, and that's what's incredible about this time. But I've embraced so much during this period, and I found myself helping others, as I've always done, but a lot more, and just feeling others, But as far as a luxury, feeling people's pain or whatever, I know that sounds a bit cliche, but it does me good to just, I've never been about me anyway. I've always been a giving person, but there's something about feeling people and feeling their woes and the depths of their, tragedies, if you will, people dying on them, so it's an incredible time to really to see what you're made of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as far as a luxury for myself, I'd just love to get me a little bungalow in Barbados on this voyage. Can we land there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's land in Barbados.
I think we should be, we should be able to create the technology that we can actually, rather than just a Zoom meeting, you can actually have fully three-dimensional, completely safe, suddenly you've got people there in your life, you can just sit and chat too.
Well, it's around the corner. Oops,
Yeah.
it's around the corner. So anything is possible these days. I mean, it's like reminds me of the Joaquin Phoenix film and Scarlett Johansson's Her. Have you seen that film?
I haven't, no.
Fascinating. It's just about him falling in love with a voice that he just dials up.
Oh,
And
yes.
he wants to meet the voice. And it's such an incredible romantic longing that's impossible to really achieve, but it's just well written. And yeah, good
Wow.
one. Check it out sometime.
I will do. I've got lots to listen to and watch, which is what I love about doing these interviews, because I always come away knowing so much more.
Yeah, I bet you do.
About things. Gerard, thank you so much for taking some time and holding cameras and so on.
I know, it's all right. It gives my arms a bit of a workout in a strange way.
Okay. Well, I'll let you get on with the rest of the day, and thank you very much again.
Oh, thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Good.
Look after yourself. Stay well.
Thank you again to G. Tom Mack. What a gentleman. And thank you for joining us today. Until next time, be safe and well.